Okay, so this talk is all about how can we make data more meaningful. It's okay, I'll just do it. All right. So, in this world, we have way more data than we can really digest. I think it's not about adding more data, but it's more about how can we make data that we have more meaningful and useful and usable to the growers community and in general in any sector, but more specifically for agriculture, this has been a challenge. If you look at the federal level, I mean, yeah, they recognize this. CDFA has several reports, and they mentioned about making data growers friendly or user friendly is one of their priorities. And we did some focus groups with almond growers and across the state in different commodities as well. And I think there is a clear need for like really crop specific information rather than generic averages in terms of the data. So, there is clear need for transferring data into more decision support or meaningful decisions. These are some of the survey that mentioned about the growers' interest in data and also the technical service providers' interest in data. I'll skip those, and I think this came up in the panel. So when we talked about the what kind of grow the weather data growers need, and I think what we found out is economics, labor, logistics, these are the priorities, and weather and climate is kind of hidden in all those main aspects. And so I think the idea is how can we better integrate information into all these different areas so that it's more meaningful and useful to growers. Um, Last year or a couple of years ago, we ran a session on climate adaptation forum with Indy. And I think, there's those 60, 70 people in that audience, and mostly, I believe it was county officials, decision makers, few growers. So it was a mixed bag. And what we asked about, like, well, if we put the data or if we have the decision support, what are the main things they are asking for? Like, how can we make it more meaningful? How can we make it useful? And I think, some of the common themes came out is you need to really first engage audience before you even start designing something. And translating data and visualization was important. And the last one was improving accessibility and making it more equitable, and in terms of, like, if you create something and leave it there for people, assuming people would understand your tools and then use it, is not going to work. You have to really put an effort in dissemination and training and making them understand and use of the tools. But anyways, um, so with that in mind, and we are not able to touch all the things I mentioned, but I think we started this completely free, open, web-based system called CalAgroClimate, and it was originally funded by U.S. Department of Agriculture, and then the University of California provided continued support. And so we have not four but five different set of tools: heat advisory, frost advisory, crop phenology, pest advisory, and the last one is agroclimatic indicator. So, um, technically, the station on your farm is the best resource for data. But not all farms have weather station and history of weather and climate information right at your fingertip, right? So then what do? You rely on gridded data, which is a simplified version of, like, when you have all the information available and you create a gridded system where things are a little bit delusional in a sense, but then it still provides information and useful information. So instead of in your location, if you want to really make use of data, then you have to rely on weather station that is 100 miles away. That's not logical. So in that case, if you don't have other sources, gridded data source is a good option, alternative. And typical, the free resource is 4 kilometers by 4 kilometers, which is on your right. And the high resolution is 800-meter resolution. So in our tools, we are using that 800-meter resolution, which provides a little bit more clarity in data and making this information freely available. So I'll just quickly go through all four tools and not spend time in details about it. That feel free to go on the website is calagroclimate.org, and that you'll be able to access. We try to make it free and sorry, not it is free, but we try to make it simple as possible. Um, in terms of the frost advisory and heat advisory tool, it's nothing more than a 7-day forecast. But then in this case, we are trying to make it a little bit more simple. Um, if your crop is exposed to frost for 1 day versus 2 days consecutive, 3 days consecutive, your damage our risk is much higher. So that this tool, it's telling you can select your threshold and it will tell you what's your frost risk for next 7 to 10 days, and that's based on how many consecutive days your temperature is going to be below that range, based on the information available. Same for heat advisory, but the opposite, right? Like, you choose a threshold which may be 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 90s or 110, and then it'll tell you how many days your temperature is going to be above that range. And so, that way you can really select your crop's vulnerability and decide what's best for the crop. This crop phenology tool is a little bit more data and crop driven. So you can select your crop, you can also select your variety, and it will by default put some growth stages in it based on the crop and the variety you chose. And then it will give you a prediction of the growth development for the current year, but you can also compare it with last 5 years, last 10 years. That way, you know how this year is compared to the historical number of years. And again, this is using that 800-meter resolution data. You can pinpoint anywhere in California and you get this information that is specific to the crop. So you can pretty much go in there is a place called location or something like that, and then it's a Google map, so you can pinpoint your location in that particular, and then you get this kind of information where you have the growth stages and also have frost information and other information. Similar for pest advisory tool, where you can go and select a particular pest for a particular crop, and it'll give you a estimation of where those growth stages occurred for this particular pest. And growers can use this type of information for scouting, pesticide application, etc. And this is the last tool that we added, probably a year after we launched this, uh, where it's, you can select a portion of a county. So you can select a county, but then within the county, you have a sub-region that you can select, and it'll give you all these indicators in a time series. So, how frost days have changed in last 40 years, 30 to 40 years, spring freeze, first fall freeze, tropical nights. And so these are the indicators relevant for different crops. So it's not really crop specific, but you can use this information for any type of use you want. And again, this is the historical year. So, if you are in a region where you want to really see the vulnerability, how things have changed in past, but nothing about the future in this, but because it's using the historical years. But again, this is a free resource, and I think it's a work in progress. So when we developed this tool, we had some interactions with growers, cooperative extension, advisor specialist, to make it more and more relevant to the group. And so we are constantly adding or changing. So if you see anything that needs to be added or changed, you can always contact me. My information is here. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions online?
Thanks for staying.
Okay. Thank you, Tapan. So our next speakers, I guess, are going to be Andy Lyons, who is from the UC ANR IGIS program. So that's Geographic